This week, more than 11,000 researchers issued a warning the Earth is facing a, quote, climate emergency. They claim there could be untold suffering if we continue the current climate change trajectory. Now, the scientists come from more than 150 countries. They listed 6 key issues they say need to be addressed. Those include replacing fossil fuels, reducing emissions of climate pollutants such as methane and soot, protecting and restoring ecosystems, consuming less animal product, building a carbon-free economy, and stabilizing world population growth. Katie Johnston for CBS Local News.
In recent months, climate emergencies have been declared by Canada and a number of other countries. I'm sure you've heard them. Cities have also sounded the alarm. Well, this morning, in a brand new declaration, 11,000 scientists from 153 countries are bolstering that claim. Here is some of what's in that declaration published in the journal Bioscience. The Alliance of World Scientists says it has a moral obligation to warn humanity. It says greenhouse gas emissions are still rising and that recent efforts to reduce them are not enough. The declaration also says the climate crisis is accelerating faster than many scientists predicted, that it's caused even more damage than many had feared. The Alliance says it had to speak out. Why? Because climate change is threatening ecosystems and, get this, the fate of humanity. Scary words there. The fate of humanity. CBC senior science reporter Nicole Mortellaro is going through this report. And Nicole, I know it's a big one, lots of dense information, but 11,000 scientists signed on. That's got to mean something. They managed to find some strong agreement on some very specific areas of concern. Can you point those out?
Yeah, so the report itself actually is pretty straightforward. It's talking about the areas of concern. They have 6. So we have energy, and they say that we need to obviously move away from fossil fuels into low carbon renewable energy. There's short-lived pollutants like soot, like black carbon and hydrofluorocarbons, the HFCs. We might remember that from the ozone layer discussion that we had decades ago. There's also nature, protecting our biosphere, and our forests, et cetera. And food, transferring, we've heard this, of course, a lot lately, plant-based, mostly plant-based foods, which also frees up area for, green areas instead of for cropland. It'll be forest and natural. And also the economy. So they said, we're always focusing on the GDP, but we need to look to sustainability and have economies look at that instead.
Dr. Newsom, good morning to you.
Good morning, Michael.
When you and your colleagues around the world talk about untold human suffering if climate change is not addressed, what do you mean by that?
Well, I guess if you look at the data over the last 40 years, it doesn't paint a great picture. And under a business as usual approach, things like extreme climatic events, big floods, big rains, long wound out droughts, are likely to be possibly more frequent and more extreme. Globally, we've also got increases in sea level rises, which is inundating island communities as well. And together, those events are not great for human health and well-being.
Okay, and of course, one of the things you want all governments, including Australia, to do is fast-track the transition from fossil fuels to renewables. How, practically speaking, how quickly can that happen, or would you like it to happen?
Well, a lot of these emergencies or these climate warnings have been given for a long time now. I mean, some of the first warnings were given over 40 years ago, and we've tracked the data over the last 40 years, and it doesn't paint a great picture. We need to act now. It's not too late to act, but really we need to get moving. Greenhouse gas emissions continue to rise, despite all the warnings from scientists. But really, the movement needs to be at a global level. So every country has a responsibility to act and also to meet some of the international agreements that they have signed up to.
Hello and welcome to The Big Story, where we'll discuss the top news of today and explain why it matters. I'm Dylan Ang, coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. Now, for our first story, more than 11,000 scientists from a wide range of disciplines have come together to declare that we are currently in a climate emergency. One of the solutions these experts from 153 countries are proposing: fewer humans on the planet. This is in addition to getting the world to replace fossil fuels with renewable energy. This is the first time a large group of scientists have formally labelled climate change an emergency. Here with us to discuss this is environment correspondent Audrey Tan. Hey Audrey.
Hi Dylan.
Thanks for being in the show. Now Audrey, how does this study differ from previous scientific assessments that has been published before?
The main difference would be in the tone of the paper. So the science behind what they're saying is not new. So we all know the impacts of climate change, things like melting sea ice, lessening sea ice, melting glaciers, which are land ice, rising temperatures, growing concentrations of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. All these have also been outlined in the latest study.
Right.
But what is different is the tone. So this is the first time that scientists have actually come together to declare climate change as a crisis. And the main reason for this is the previous reports that have been talked about a lot previously came from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So as the name suggests, IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel, all the reports that are published have to be approved line by all the governments of the world. So that would actually, and well, the science has been quite clear that humans are responsible for climate change. This is not the stance that some countries agree with. So because IPCC works on a consensus basis, if you don't get all the countries agreeing on the use of certain words, you don't get to see that in the final report.